I'm going to show you how we're going to transfer the ascorbic acid to the Erlenmeyer flask. The ascorbic acid, we need 25.00 mils, so what we're going to use is one of these, which is called a volumetric pipette. We're going to transfer it by means of this, which is a pipette bulb. Back in the olden days, people used to suck these things up with their mouth. It's not advised. You never know what you might be sucking up, so it's not a very good idea to use your mouth. Use a pipette bulb, such as one of these. The pipette bulb itself has 3 buttons on it, A, B and C. The A button, you can press that and you can compress the bulb, and that will create the vacuum that will be needed to suck up the liquid. The B button here will allow me to press that and it will suck the liquid up. The C button allows me to release pressure in case I go a little bit too far and need to adjust the level. You'll notice there's a line at the top here of the volumetric pipette. That line represents 25.00 mils, and I'll show you in a second how the meniscus looks on the liquid, and this needs to be at the bottom of the meniscus, the bottom of the U shape. Alright, so let's take a look at how we can transfer this. I have a beaker here, and the beaker must be clean and dry. This is what I'm going to transfer my ascorbic acid solution into. If it's wet at all, that's going to affect the molarity of it. I'm just putting a bit in here. Now what I'm going to do is grab my volumetric pipette here, and I'm going to attach the bulb to the top. I've already pressed the A button and compressed the bulb, so it's ready to roll. So what I'm going to do is stick it in here. I showed you the B button earlier. You might not see it on the screen, but I'm going to compress that. And what you'll notice is that the liquid will begin to climb here up the volumetric pipette. Remember, I want to try and get on the line. I'll bring it up close in a second. I'll show you the meniscus. Now presently it's above the line where I want it to be, but you can see you see how it's a U shape there. So you want that U, the bottom of it, to be on this line here. So I'm going to use the C button to release some of the ascorbic acid here, and I'm going to try and get it onto that line. Okay, I've done that. So now I'm going to bring it over here, and then I can use the C button to release into my Erlenmeyer flask. Now the Erlenmeyer flask, that needs to be clean, but it does not necessarily have to be dry. It can be a little bit wet. Now the reason for that is because we're transferring a known amount of the ascorbic acid, but now we're only interested in the moles for the titration. Now we can also just simply take the bulb off here, and it will obviously go in to the flask like this. Now the way these are designed is that there's always going to be a little bit left in the bottom, so just sort of roll it around a little bit on the side here, and you'll always be left with a little bit in the bottom of the volumetric pipette, but that's okay. So we've transferred the amount we need to the Erlenmeyer flask. I'm now going to show you how to clean out the Buret and fill it with iodine solution. If you're short, it's probably better to take the Buret off the stand. Just make sure that the stopcock is closed before you add anything to the Buret. Put a little bit of water through the funnel here. Take the funnel out. Just sort of slosh around the top here a little bit with the water. Do this a couple of times just to rinse it out. I'm just going to do it once here. After we've completed the water, what I like to do is rinse it out with whatever I'm going to put in it. Now one thing about rinsing is that it's always better to do a few rinses with a small amount than one large rinse with a big amount. So what I'm going to do is just put a small amount of iodine into the burette, and I'm doing it down here again, making sure the stopcock is closed. If you're tall enough, it's probably better to leave it in the burette stand while you're doing the filling, but not everybody is tall enough to do that. So it runs down the sides and that pretty much cleans it out, and then you can release it. So do that a couple of times, just a small amount of iodine in the burette. I'm going to put this back in the burette stand. I know you won't see me adding the iodine to the top here because that's going to be out of shot of the camera. But what we're going to be interested in is just what's happening with the burette mainly. So I'm going to add the iodine to the burette. I'm adding it through the top here. Of course the stopcock is closed. Now the thing with the burette is I don't have to fill it all the way to the top. I'm actually going to fill this, say around to about the 2 mark. I'll tell you why in a second. Now the other thing you'll notice, or it's going to be hard to see on the camera, but right here there's a bit of an air bubble down here. That actually counts as volume. We've got to get rid of that. Very good, easy way to get rid of it is just to do that a couple of times with the stopcock, and you'll notice now that it's a completely full part down here, so we're good. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a little bit more out here, and I'm going to bring the burette down. I'm going to try and arrange it in front of the camera so that you can see the graduations, and we can talk about how to measure from a burette. So what I want to show you now is how we can measure something on the meniscus here. As you can see, I haven't filled it all the way to the top, and there's no real reason to. When we take a burette reading, we take an initial reading, and then we take a reading at the end after we've delivered the iodine. And the difference, of course, is going to be the amount of iodine delivered by the burette. The way that the burette is set up is you can see that this is a 3 up here and this is a 4 down here. Now you can see that the liquid is forming something of a meniscus, and a meniscus is this U shape here for the liquid. When we're measuring at a meniscus, we measure the bottom of the meniscus, and in this instance the bottom of the meniscus is between the 6th and 7th graduation between the 3 and the 4. So the 3's up here, the 4's down here, the 6th and 7th is down here. And the measurement I would use for that would either be 3.65 or 3.70. In all cases, these burette measurements are always done to 2 decimal places. The reason for that is because between the 3 and the 4 we've got 10 graduations, which means that each one of those is worth 0.1. If we measure half of that graduation, it becomes 0.05, which means every measurement now is going to have to be done to 2 decimal places. It'll either be point something 0 or point something 5. In this case, we can do 3.65 or 3.70. Always, though, measure at the bottom of the meniscus. I'm now going to show you how to titrate the ascorbic acid with the iodine solution. The first thing we need to do is we've got our 25.00 mils of ascorbic acid solution. I'm going to add 1 mil or 20 drops of 0.2 molar acetic acid. That's about one of these pipettes full. I'm now also going to add 10 drops of starch indicator. If I do not add the indicator, this will not turn purple. I've set this up so that the lid of the flask is at the point of the burette, just around about there so it doesn't splash out. I've started this, it's at about 5.40 millilitres, and I'm now going to add the iodine from the burette and wait for it to turn a light shade of purple. At this point, you can begin to see that there is a slight blue occurring as we add the iodine to the ascorbic acid, just at the very point of entry. And you'll notice as we swirl it, that blue goes away. As we get closer to the end point, it will persist a bit longer, but it will go away when it's swirled. Now I know I'm very, very close to the end point. Very close. So I'm going to slow right down now and just add a very small amount of this solution, just one drop here. One trick I can use is, because the molarity doesn't matter anymore, all that matters is the moles, I can always push in a drop with the wash bottle like that. Yes, this is getting really, really close now. One needs to exercise some patience. Don't over add, because what will happen is you'll overshoot. Getting really close now. Just rinse in. In fact, I think that is the end point right there. As you can see, a very, very slight shade of purple. That's what you're looking for. And that's when I would read off the Buret exactly how much was there, and I'd read that to 2 decimal places, because that's what the Buret is capable of measuring to. I'm going to show you what happens now if we continue with the titration and we get an overshoot. We get that blue colour, still more, and it can turn an even darker purple. So now I'm going to show you how to do the titration of the juice. And what we're going to do is we're going to add 1 milliliter of the acetic acid, 0.2 molar acetic acid. That's the same as about 20 drops, one of these pipettefuls. And then 10 drops of the starch indicator to give out a nice purple colour at the end. Now, as we noticed before with the other iodine titration, we're going to begin to see nice blue colour down in here as we add it. But as we swirl it, the blue colour goes away. We're getting fairly close to the end point now, so I'm going to slow down a bit. Just sort of add it a couple of drops at a time. Slowly, slowly. Again, we're looking for that very, very light blue colour for the entire solution to persist. I feel like we're getting pretty close now. That is probably about it. I'm going to add a little bit of DI water to the top here, since that's going to be part of the measurement anyway. There we go. That is the perfect colour there. Just a very, very slight tinge of purple amongst the background of the juice. It can be a little hard to see, maybe a little bit harder to see possibly than the one you might get just with the colourless solution. Now what I'm going to show you is what happens if we overshoot, but this is about the colour we want, and remember that I would now measure the Buret and I would take that measurement to 2 decimal places. Now what I'm going to do is go ahead and just add a bit more, just show you what it looks like if we overshoot. There we go, see it becomes that light blue colour, and I'll keep on going, become much more purple. But what we're aiming for is that very light tinge.